Good evening, everyone. I am Vidhi, and I welcome you all to the fourth day of our live series, Person Behind the Persona. I am indeed excited and thrilled to introduce you to our guest for today, Priyansha Mishra. She's currently working at Microsoft as a product manager, and she is an avid AI advocate. Her work experiences vary across many industries. Before working as a product manager, she worked as a partner technology strategist at Microsoft. She is also a part of the Global Shapers community. She also worked for the conceptualization for the launch of Tata Quick Chai. And today she will be talking about design thinking in engineering and product management. Just introducing her has got me all pumped up and I can't wait for the session. So I would like to request her to take up.
Thanks for that lovely introduction, Vidhi, and so excited to be with everybody today at this particular event with Goa. I'm going to present my screen. I'll just need a quick thumbs up from you guys, a confirmation that you guys can see it.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's get started. That was a great introduction, but I have a brief introduction that I would also want to take you through and tell you a little bit about myself, why I'm here, and what I really want to talk about today. On an overarching theme, this is about design thinking. This session will cover design thinking, but what I really want to leave you with is on how you can unlock your creative potential. And we tend to look at design thinking from a buzzword perspective. It's something that everybody's talking about, everybody wants to know more about. But how is it that you actually put that into practice? And I will be showing you that through some case studies, through some of the things that I've seen, and some of the things that are relevant to product management as well as engineering in the design thinking space. So before starting off, like I said, just a brief introduction. While you heard all of that from Vidhi, I'm currently a product manager at Microsoft. I was previously a partner tech strategist at Microsoft. I would just like to talk about how these worlds are different and what I've learned from each of them. So I was actually hired at Microsoft from college. I did my bachelor's in EC from Manipal Institute of Technology and landed a pre-placement offer at Microsoft in the global sales and marketing organization, which is closer to the customer. I was a field-facing role. I used to talk to clients and partners and customers day in, day out. That was the core role that I was playing there. And after 1.5 years, I moved to the engineering side, where I've taken up the role of a product manager and taken that customer centricity with me from that particular field role to the engineering side. And today, what I'm going to talk about is how these two roles have taught me, that human-centered design thinking and also the customer obsession that we must carry into product management, into engineering, and into actually a lot of roles that you guys will, go on to do after your engineering. That's a little bit about me. Before starting off with design thinking, I also want to briefly touch upon this whole notion around creativity, right? So when I started off, my slide said unlocking your creative potential. Now, I believe there's a chat, so maybe you guys can just put it there. But I just want to know from you, what is your idea of creativity, right? What do you think creativity is? And up till a certain point, I thought creativity was just being artistic. If you see this drawing on the screen, this is how I used to draw and how I probably even draw now. And I always thought that made me somebody who's not a creative person, right? I was always bucketed as somebody who's not the creative type. And just because of that mental block in my head, whenever I was presented with an opportunity to, come up with a new idea or come up with a creative solution or do some out of the box thinking, I used to think that, I'm not the creative type. Maybe this is not my cup of tea. And that mental block is where, a lot of us just growing up, just mistaking creativity for being artistic. We develop that mental block and we're not able to really do the out of the box thinking that is required in the real world to come up with these brilliant products and solutions. So the first thing that I want to talk about and that I want you guys to get over before we even get into the design thinking conversation is on creativity, right? So I want all of you to think about how you can be creative, how you are already creative, and how you can really unlock that creative potential within you. If you too are in the position that I was probably, a couple of years back, where I would think of creativity as something that is not my cup of tea, I would highly recommend that you read a book called Creative Confidence by the Kelly brothers, which really will put these things into perspective and talk about how, each one of us is very creative, and how you can really go about structurally unlocking that creative potential. But yeah, for today's session, if you are in that headspace that you're not creative, I want you to just get over that. And as we move on to the next slide, I want you to think that you're creative and how you can come up with innovative solution as we talk through this. So what really is design thinking? Now let's get down to the stuff, basic theories that you must know before you actually get your hands dirty. What really is design thinking? It really is the combination, the intersection of customer desirability, business viability, and technical feasibility. So the intersection is where design thinking really lies. And the whole design thinking process, which I'll show you in just a bit, is really validating each of these steps on how is the customer really desiring this product, or is this really a pain point, or is this an assumption that you and I are making, right? So the first one on customer desirability, then the business viability and the tech feasibility, through ideation, prototyping, and really understanding that this is a viable business model, this is something that is technologically feasible, and overall then the intersection is where the design thinking will lie. Now, in a simple sort of a framework, you can think of design thinking as a 5-stage process by which you can come up with human-centered solutions, right? So putting your customers, putting the users at the center of everything, and coming up with these brilliant solutions through design thinking, through this 5-step process. So this is what we're trying to do with design thinking, and that's why I spoke all that about creativity and coming up with out of the box solutions. So this will just help you structurally put that into action. But yeah, getting over that mental block is the first thing that you must do. The rest follows with these 5 steps that you see on the screen. Now, when you see these 5 steps on the screen, each one of them, like I said, is validating against the 3 areas that we talked about earlier: desirability, viability, and feasibility. Now, let me take you through each of the 5 steps here. The first one is empathize, right? So design thinking is starting with the customer, starting with the users, empathizing with the users, really trying to understand what is the real pain point that you're solving for, not assuming things, not sitting in a room and brainstorming that, okay, this might be a pain point, that might be a pain point, but actually getting out there, talking to your users, understanding right from them that what exactly is it that they're facing, what is the user journey like, right? Where it is, where all are they actually facing blockers? So really starting with the user, empathizing with the user, and understanding what is the real pain point that they're facing. The second part comes in defining the problem statement. While there might be a lot of things that may be pain points for different sets of users, how will you come down and drill down that, okay, my solution will solve for these 3 things or these 4 things, right? So defining the problem that you will solve for and defining the scope of your solution as well. And then coming down to the ideation. Now, if you are an aspiring product manager, or you have probably looked up these product management questions that are typically asked in the interviews, you must have seen that there are all these design questions, and the worst way that is listed to go about them is to jump straight to the solution, right? And that is what even design thinking talks about, that the ideation is only the 3rd stage where you actually start thinking about the solution. But before that, you're only thinking about the customer, you're only empathizing, defining, and talking about the problem. The solution is only after the 3rd stage that that you even start thinking about the solution. But that is what often goes wrong in a lot of product management interviews, where people just directly jump into the solution and directly start talking about what they can build and what brilliant ideas they have. So yeah, the third stage is when you actually start ideating, start thinking against each of the problem statements that you've identified and how you will solve for each of them. And then finally coming on to the prototyping phase, right? This is where you actually start prototyping, getting active feedback from customers on your prototypes, and even start testing these out. And prototyping, testing, ideation, these are where you actually figure out, your business viability and your tech feasibility as well. So this is what the process of design thinking looks like. Right now, you can find this everywhere on the internet. It is really a very straightforward process to understand. But I would really encourage you to see how this is actually put into practice, right? And one of some of the things that I want to talk about today in this session is how this was put into action with these particular startups that emerged out of Stanford's D School. So before I go there, a little bit about the Stanford D School. If you guys haven't heard of it, it's a design school that was started by the Kelly brothers, and Tom Kelly and David Kelly are the folks who actually popularized design thinking. And in the D School, there are a lot of case studies of how through this process, through this framework, and putting that into action, a lot of students have come up with some very, very innovative solutions for the real world problems that we have. So two of these that I'm going to talk about today. For the first one is this particular Embrace baby warmer. Now, the problem that was shown at the students at the D school was that there are a lot of premature babies that are born, and low weight babies that are born, especially in developing countries, right? And there aren't enough incubators to support their mortality, and there aren't enough incubators to support their mortality, and especially if these are developing countries. So a lot of the times, hospitals don't have enough, or they're hard to sort of operate. The donated ones are hard to operate, and a bunch of other problems around incubators were proposed, right? So the first line of thought that the students had here was to think from the doctor's point of view, the hospital staff's point of view, right? Those were the customers. The medical practitioners were really the customers in the first context when they started out. So and then they actually went on to do some field research, and they went to Nepal, and they actually spoke to users, started talking to hospitals, and what was really going on there. And they soon realized that the bigger problem was actually being faced by the mothers, and that was becoming a bigger challenge, because most of these premature and low weight babies were actually being born in the rural areas, right? So when they actually got down to the field, they discovered a new challenge there. It was more in the rural areas, and mothers were not comfortable separating from their babies. They were not okay going to the cities also from the rural areas where the incubators were, going to the cities. And often these city hospitals actually did not have a lack of incubators, but had incubators that were actually empty, because the mothers did not want to keep their child in an incubator. Maybe even if they did, they would just keep them there for like a day or two, and they would just not feel comfortable keeping them out there. And there were a lot of challenges, like coming from rural to city, placing the babies there and separating from mothers. So all of these challenges that they discovered when they went out into the field. Now, what was interesting is that this really shifted their focus, right? This shifted the customer itself. So who was their initial customer versus who became their customer when they realized where the actual problem lied, and how they devised the solution was also molded by this, right? And on getting this quick feedback from the field, they actually came up with this particular solution, which is a baby warmer that can be used by the mother. They don't have to be in the hospital to use this. This is just powered through some high technology wax, and they have some boiling water through which they can sanitize this and use it again. And this keeps the babies at the optimal temperature for about 4 hours. So really this was solving for the problem, and at almost a fraction of the cost of the incubator, right? So no matter how well they would have built the incubator for the earlier challenge, nobody would have used the incubator, because the actual challenge on field of the customer was very different, right? And herein the ideation, the defining and the empathize phase really clarified that for them, right? They were able to redefine the problem statement. So they redefined the problem statement from actually talking about building a low cost incubator to building a baby warmer that can be used in remote rural areas by the mothers. So that's how they went about putting design thinking into action, and how they got very active feedback from the customers, and redefined that problem and actually understood what was the real pain point, instead of going all the way into building an enhanced incubator that could lower costs. So that's an interesting one that came from the D School, and I think that's a great example of how design thinking can be put into practice. Another one that I have here is the Pulse newsreader. Again, something that emerged from the D School. Now, what I want to highlight in this one is how these guys got feedback, active feedback on the customer side, trying to understand what the customer really wants and how they actually did the prototyping as well, right? So the Pulse newsreaders founders, they actually used to spend entire days in cafes just talking to people, who'd be sitting there with a newspaper, telling them, asking them how they would want their digital experience to be, chatting up with them in terms of what possible pain points they have for the current solutions that existed at that point, to read the news digitally. So really trying to understand from the user's perspective, and this is after they already had a hypothesis with themselves in terms of understanding that okay, it is currently a challenge. We've seen this ourselves. We currently face this challenge that we're not able to get the news properly from these RSS feeds or whatever solutions are existing currently. And then they went and validated it with their actual customers, and they discovered a lot of other things as well, which they perhaps had not thought through, but the customers were able to point out that okay, this is also a challenge, and this can also become a challenge once these things become digital. So really getting down into an environment where there were a lot of users that were present of that particular application, and getting active feedback. And what was interesting was also how they did the prototyping, right? So they started with these sketches that you can see on the screen, where they just drew simple sketches. They did these with sticky notes as well, right? Before actually going to the mock-ups, there were a lot of different ways that they tried out, very simple ways that they tried out to get customer feedback. Because often when you're talking to the customer about this or that, or you're just quizzing them or just trying to understand their pain points, there's only so much that can come out. But when you start presenting them with a possible solution and start showing them that okay, these are alternate ways, right? Would you prefer like screen X versus screen Y, in terms of reading the news? Would you like a more visual or a more text heavy look on your newsreader? So all of these things they were able to test very early on with the customers, and actually build out these sketches and these sticky notes prototypes that they were testing it out within the cafe before building mock-ups or an actual app. So this was again an interesting way that they put design thinking into action. And this was actually the work of a few days, that when they actually went from idea to prototype, right? Because it was a very fast-paced task that they had to present this application for. But really going through that whole process and doing that in a very structural way, getting adequate feedback from customers, doing the proper prototyping, testing it out, incorporating that feedback. All of that was done in a matter of a few days. So that's how design thinking was put in action in this particular project. Now, when we talk about product management, and you might have seen a lot of these questions pop up very frequently, especially when you're looking at mock product management questions, right? One of the questions that I've posed on the screen here is a product management question that I got in my interview. Which is to design a navigation solution for a blind person, right? So here, a lot of the times when we start thinking around this, answering this question, we might just directly jump to the solution, right? But what I would want you guys to do right now is maybe just grab a pen and a paper and try to think of a solution here, just taking it through all the 5 stages of design thinking, right? Starting with the empathy phase, and then taking it all the way through to the last phase, right? Maybe you can't test it right now, but all the other phases you can probably play around it and see how you're thinking around it, right? Because a lot of the times in product management, and I was told that you guys will be going for a lot of interviews and summer projects after this, and when you are interviewing there, the interviewer would want to look at your line of thinking instead of the actual solution that you come up with. They would be more interested in how you're thinking around it, right? And which is why something like design thinking or the other frameworks that you'll find on the internet will really help you structure your thoughts, and also present a customer centric way of thinking to your interviewer as well, right? So this particular question, the right way to go about it would not be to propose a great solution, right? The right way to go about it was to start with the customer and understand more about what the customer's journey is like, and especially putting yourself in their shoes and trying to imagine that, okay, if today I am a blind person and I have to navigate, what are the challenges that I might face, right? Trying to visualize that, asking your interviewer certain questions about the customer demographics, right? This might be a little too broad, but you want to know the customer more. You want to know where they're based, what's the typical age bracket we're looking at, and a lot of other things that you would want to understand about your customer before actually even starting to ideate about the solution. So in action, I think in product management, design thinking, it will be your bread and butter. I mean, every time that you will be faced with a challenge around your product, probably won't always be coming up with a whole new product, but thinking of a new feature or a new problem that the customer is facing. How would you think around that, right? How would you go around solving that, right? So all of these things will become core to your product management role, and that's why design thinking is very important in that aspect. And if you are pursuing a developer role or a software engineering role, again, this is very important for you, because when you're building something, one of the things that most great developers have is having that customer centric mind, even when they are building something new, right? So while the PMs can come up with a spec and give all the justification in terms of business justification, and why we're building that, and what problem is it solving, for a developer to have that customer centric mind, and when they're actually building, and cross question the PM in terms of does it really make sense to the customer? Is it in benefiting the customer? Will it cause some new challenges for the customer? So really thinking through that is something that will benefit you in both these roles in engineering. And I think if I have to leave you with one thing from this entire conversation, that one thing that you must remember if you're going into product management or into engineering, it is to think of the customer, right? Put the customer at the center of everything that you do. any framework that you see around product management, or any design thinking modules, or anything that we're in this day and age that we're talking about to really build brilliant products, will always put your customer at the center, will always put your user at the center. So that's one thing that I would definitely want you to remember from this session and carry on if you're going into product or you're going into software development roles. And finally, I think, like I said before, all of this is might be a lot of theory, good to hear, good to learn, but it'll really happen for you when you start building something out and identify a problem to really put this into practice. You saw a lot of the ones that I talked about in terms of solutions, possible solutions that people came up with, putting design thinking into practice. But I would highly encourage that you identify a problem around you and think of a solution that can solve for that problem, right? Taking it all through all the stages in terms of empathizing with your customer, defining the problem statement, ideating, prototyping, testing, and really take it all the through all the stages. And I think that is something that can be a great side project for you to showcase how good of a PM you can be, right? So if you have any thoughts on this, or any interesting thoughts on what you want to solve for, or any interesting ideas, solutions that you come up with when you're doing this brainstorming, please do reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to stay connected and have a conversation further as well. So that was my talk. Vidhi, I think I'd hand it over back to you. No, absolutely. I think from my experience, if you see, I did a whole bunch of wild internships that don't seem to add up. But each one of them gave me a very unique perspective, and also, helped me explore that creative side. An example I'll give you is an internship I did at an ad agency, right? And this ad agency was this happened when just before I was joining Microsoft full time, and I had that sort of that cushion that, okay, I am going to join you full time, so it doesn't really matter what I do now. I can just experiment, I can just follow my curiosity and find out about all of these fields. And that's how I ended up at Shebang. And I think that is when I started to realize how much fun it is to create something from scratch. Because I was given tasks like, okay, Xiaomi is launching this product, we need to come up with a campaign, right? Very vague, and people just walk off. You're an intern, nobody will sit with you to explain that much. But yeah, they would just give me a very broad problem statement. I'd spend the whole day solving it, thinking of what all we can do, what all channels we can go to, and how we would really take that creative approach, who's our target audience. So that entire process of thinking through something, and defining my own problem statement of and who I want to reach out to, and defining what the campaign will look like. I think that is something that I learned about myself, that I really enjoy doing, right? And that is something that is very relevant for product management as well, because a lot of the times you will be thrown with certain challenges like that, right? For example, you'll be told that, okay, there is a security breach and it can happen in your product as well. Now you have to come up with a solution for it, right? And you won't have any information. You will have to go to people, talk to people, understand more about what's going on, and figure everything out. So you're just thrown a broad problem in your it's like a mission that you are on, and you have to solve for that. I love the thrill of that. So I think all of the things that I did, even in college, I founded a club, and even there it was like very vague, because I had a mission in mind that, okay, I want to do this with my club, and this is why I'm starting out. But then everything else was very chaotic. It was not defined. Everything I was defining and creating some organizing all of that chaos. So I really got a thrill out of it. So I think that taught me a lot of things. In all honesty, I think I learned most outside the classroom. So yeah, they all the experiences added up to what I get to do today.
Okay, so the next one is for the aspiring PMs and design thinkers. What tools should they master before for becoming product managers and design thinkers.
So
Something they
one yeah. So
should
one
learn now.
sorry. I'm so sorry, Vidhi. I think
Nothing, continue, sorry.
you're breaking up a little for me. So if I got the question right, it's tools for design thinkers and aspiring PMs. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So in terms of tools, I think some of the things that I would encourage you to look at is one is the IDEO website. So IDEO, that is the organization that the Kelly brothers have founded. And they have a bunch of free resources. They have blogs, they have tools, they have a bunch of things that you can use to put design thinking into action. They will have templates that will help you do the right kind of customer interviews, and they have templates to really structurally ideate and test business viability and all of that. So there's a lot of good stuff out there, and that's something that I've personally found very useful. In terms of product management, I think the tools I would say differ from company to company, right? So my current company might be using something, another company might be using something else. So I won't say that that's a very important factor. I think your product thinking, your design thinking, your approach to solving problem is something you should master instead. If you're aspiring to be a PM, and don't think so much about the tools. Tools are something that will help you if you're trying to implement something, if you're trying to build a side project. But what you're usually tested on in interviews is your line of thinking and how you're thinking about building products.
Thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule. The talk today was indeed insightful and enlightening. I am sure it must have helped a lot of our viewers. Thank you so much for joining us. I would also like to thank our viewers for being so enthusiastic and responsive. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much. This is an absolute delight to be at. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.